Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Lily Rodriguez. I'm the Artistic Director at the Palm Springs International Film Society. Thank you so much for joining us on this very special conversation for Monsoon. We have screenings lined up for the rest of December and through January. If you're not a member of the Film Society yet, we invite you to please visit psfilmfest.org and learn a little bit more about what we have to offer. So we're so happy to be bringing Monsoon to you all, and we're even happier that we get to have conversation with the filmmakers, with the actor. And today's conversation is going to be moderated by our very own David Ansen, who will take it away. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Lily.
Hey, guys.
And,
hey, David.
Welcome, Henry. It's great.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a wonderful performance and a fascinating movie, which personally was very intriguing to me because I was in Vietnam 20 years ago and was struck by how much it had changed.
It's weird. It's one of those places that changes so much, yet has so much familiarity for people who tend to go back. You know, there's certain things that just doesn't change, like the street food, the people, the hustle, the entrepreneurship. It's an amazing country, Vietnam, and so complex.
Yeah. Had you been there many times before you did this film?
I had, because at that point I was still living in Singapore. So up until then, I was living in Asia for about 10 years. So I had been to Vietnam probably close to 5 or 6 times, but never to any great length. I mean, this was the most time I've spent there, which was about 3 months, I would say, and that gives you an opportunity to not only sort of look into the window of Vietnam, but actually open it up and kind of step through and rummage around and really experience it for what it is. And I fell in love with the place, to be honest.
It's an amazing place. It's so different from, I mean, the difference between Hanoi and Saigon is vast. You know?
And that's down to, you know, the French up in Hanoi, really. I think the architecture was kept a lot longer than, say, of Ho Chi Minh.
Yeah.
Just so when you're there, you see the stark differences between the two cities, and we were very lucky to be able to film in both. So it was such a lovely experience.
Yeah. Well, tell me, how did you originally get involved in this project? It's certainly a major change of pace for you after doing, you know, Crazy Rich Asians and sort of beginning to be typecast as a sort of
yeah, exactly,
romantic leading man.
Yeah, well, it was an interesting time because I was in this state of kind of limbo. I'd finished Crazy Rich Asians. I'd finished my Paul Feig film, A Simple Favor, in sort of we filmed that in Toronto. None of these films had come out, and so I was very much an unknown, but with a bit of a CV, but nothing that anyone had sort of seen yet. And I think the first conversation I had was with the casting director in London. I was just on a general, and she was like, "I have a fantastic project that I think you'd be phenomenal in, and the backstory is very similar to your own personal story." And so she set up the connection with Hong, and I had actually seen Lilting, his 2014 Sundance film, with Ben Whishaw previous to that, and I have absolutely loved it. And I was like, wow, if he's going to put anything in this film like he did in Lilting, like I'm all in, like whatever it takes. So then started off the process of auditioning, and I did a couple of self tapes. I had a director session with Hong in LA, and then another Skype audition after that. And so he made sure that he found the correct actor and the right actor to be able to emphasize or actually empathize with the particular character.
Yeah. Well, the character, I mean, it's a fascinating study of someone who's kind of in a no man's land, culturally displaced, not sure what his identity is.
Hmm.
Um, and the character and your own, you want to talk a little bit about those similarities between your own life being caught between Malaysian culture,
Hmm.
English culture.
I mean, strangely enough, the announcement of me being cast as Nick Young in Crazy Rich Asians really spurred a lot of conversation of like, is he Asian enough? Why is he being chosen? Oh, it's because he's half white that he's able to get this role. Or it's like, oh, he's not fully English. So I've had these conversations my entire life of people trying to define my own relationship with my identity. And that's something that Kit, the character in Monsoon, goes through. Is, he was born in Vietnam, but left when he was about 8 years old, which was exactly the same time that I left from East Coast Malaysia to the UK and spent the rest of my young adult life in the UK growing up. But it was that sense of duality of knowing that he's meant to be Vietnamese, but has no connection with that culture. Like, he's grown up an English boy through and through, and his parents, they don't talk about their past and their history and why they left. And so he had all of these sort of unanswered questions in his head. And so, I think his impetus was to go back after his parents' death, was to find a resting place for his parents' ashes. And I think he felt that if he went home to Vietnam, that he would feel as though he was coming home. But it is often the case that it is not the feeling of homecoming, and it's more alienation. He starts to realize, wow, any thoughts that I had that I was Vietnamese are out the window, because I don't understand the language. I do not understand the cultural sort of intricacies. The place itself is this chaotic symphony of smells, of population, of culture and history. Vietnam is so defined by its history, and if you don't understand it from its sort of ground level, and that it's been bred in you as you were a child, sort of growing up in Vietnam, you may not understand the significance of certain things. And so Kit himself is just awash with confusion when he lands in Vietnam, and that's where the story begins.
Yeah, which is obviously a very personal story, both for you, but also for the director, yes, who is Cambodian, but I gather moved to Vietnam as a child, and like you, then went to the UK. Did you have a lot of conversations with Hong Kong? Or?
That was the definitely the inspiration, his backstory. We touched on it a few times, and for him, it was like trying to extract blood from a stone when talking to his parents. I think it was like, they had moved on. They found their home is where they made it, and that was the UK. And so he mirrored that with Kit and his relationship with his parents. But it was, Hong always brings up this phenomenal quandary of, are you representative of your nationality, your legal nationality, or are you identified by your cultural heritage? And is it wrong to be a bit of both?
Yeah.
Why do we have to make such stark borders?
Is it either or? Yeah.
Why can't you embrace, whatever it is that your path has taken you? So there's a lot of questions that kind of resonated so much with me, and I think that was my strong hook with this project.
Yeah. it must have been a challenge. I mean, one of the interesting things about your performance is that so much of it is wordless. You really don't. It's all in your reactions and your expressions, and not so much in the dialogue. Was that? I mean, you'd never really had to do that before. Was that a particular
And
challenge?
that was by design, Hong's design. I think he really wanted Kit to be so insular and so, I suppose, so closed off. I think, and that was due to his relationship growing up with his parents, of like not talking about his problems, or them not talking about his problems, or like their problems to him. And so having such a prison of emotions, you sort of see the inner turmoil when he's starting to realize like a few things along his journey. And it's just those brief moments where, you know, the chaos that surrounds him, that is Ho Chi Minh or Saigon, and you know, the inner turmoil that he kind of, you see in his eyes and his heavy heart. There's only like brief instances where he seems happy, and that brings us to another area in which by design Hong created, and that's his safety and security in his sexuality. Like, it was never made a point that he was a young gay man.
Right.
It's just like whenever it came to him looking and feeling like he's in his own skin, he was with Lewis, you know, or you know, those were the happy points. And so I think, you know, in that sense, like all of those quiet moments really kind of honed in on what the biggest issue in his life was, and that's understanding his relationship with this country and with his parents.
Yeah, I love the way he handles his gayness. I mean, it's simply not an issue. It's just who he is. But I wonder for you as an actor if it was an issue. I mean, you were talking about some flack that you got for Crazy Rich Asians. Oh, he's not Asian enough. He's half white. I mean, here you have a situation where a straight actor is playing a gay role, and some people get flack for that these days. Was that something you had to wrestle with?
It's something you definitely have to address. You know, there's such unfairness when it comes to roles for gay actors, and so, you know, why should a straight actor play a gay role? But then you have to kind of look into the importance of you know, what are you trying to say in the story? Is the story about him being gay, or is it a struggle with his cultural identity? I know that I have so much more of a connection with that backstory, of feeling displacement, of struggling with my identity, and for that part of me as an actor is so true. And so, do you concentrate on an actor being gay, or do you concentrate on an actor being able to give an authentic performance due to, you know, the subject topic? And so there's never a right answer, there's never a wrong answer, but it's always fair to have that open dialogue, and I think it is so important.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up at a time when Hollywood movies wouldn't even cast an Asian actor in an Asian role.
Yeah, it's bonkers.
People who won Academy Award, Yul Brynner is The King and I, a Swede. You know, Louise Rayner won an Oscar playing Chinese, and she's German. You know, I mean, fortunately, those days are long gone.
And you know, those won't. You're never going to make everybody happy. It's like for Asian roles, they're very limited. But do you confine what Asians can play if they're not of that specific nationality? Say me playing a Vietnamese man, I'm Malaysian. It's still Southeast Asia. Or, can a Korean play a Chinese person, or a Chinese person play an Indonesian person? You know, I come from Malaysia, where there's three main races. You aren't any less Malaysian if you're Malay, Chinese, or Indian. You're still Malaysian.
Yeah.
But to people, I don't know, there's so many rigid walls surrounding this entire topic of conversation. It's like, when do we have allowances for that, you know?
It's gotten a little crazy, you know, this notion of cultural appropriation, and white writer write about a black character, you know, I mean,
yeah,
Shakespeare did it pretty well. But it's tricky, it's complicated.
It is.
I mean, what was it like for you? You know, you went back to Malaysia when you were what, 20, 21 after
About 21, yeah.
Yeah. Did you speak the language?
I spoke enough to be able to ask directions in a taxi cab and order a very simple meal, but conversationally, zero. I could understand a lot more. And, you know, I went there on a one-way ticket, hoping to get into broadcast and into journalism. And within landing and sort of reaching the house that I was staying with these roommates, I walked into the room and it was completely empty. And I was like, you know, after feeling this entire, like, I have no idea what's going on here in Kuala Lumpur, I give myself 3 months and I'm out of here, because I don't know how I'm going to survive.
Yeah.
But I spent a good 6 years back there, and then I went over to Singapore and was kind of in between the two.
Now, was your job, you worked in television, yes, on a travel?
That's right. Yeah, so I did a lot of sort of travel shows and investigatory kind of news stories, travel news stories for Discovery, for BBC.
In English?
In English speaking, yeah. Oh, I would butcher anything that wasn't in English for sure.
That's funny. And what made you had, I gather, had a fairly successful career as a hairdresser in London. What made you decide to give that up and move back to Malaysia?
Yeah, I was a young man, and I left school in the UK after my GCSEs, so I would have been 17 going on 18, and I went into full-time apprenticeship in a hairdresser's or a hair salon in London, to work my way up. And previous to that, I mean, what got me interested in hairdressing was having a Saturday job in a barber shop when I was like 14 onwards. And then I think it was just my curiosity, and after moving up to London, spending like a good 2 years there, like having an interest in sort of seeing these people. Whenever I would go back on family trips in the summers, back to Malaysia, to Sarawak, I'd watch these kind of MTV hosts and travel show hosts like having a phenomenal time. I was like, wow, that looks like they're having so much fun, like achieving two of my at the time targets, which was travel and earn money. So being able to do both of them was kind of the fuel. I was like, well, why don't I just try my hand at it? If anything, I had the safety belt of having a trade, and that's what's so important. I think a lot of people don't realize that, like, a trade under your belt is better, or as good, or if not better than, say, a diploma of any sort, because it shows that you've physically been able to do a job. You know, on paper, perhaps you can convince somebody, yeah, I'll be suitable for that job. But to have the experience that I had, I could go anywhere and take up hairdressing. So it wasn't just a foolhardy exploration into attempting to get onto television. It was slightly calculated in a sense.
When you were cast in Crazy Rich Asians, you'd actually never acted before. Is that right? I mean, you had been a performer on television, but
yeah, exactly. So that was my first actual acting gig. And I had meant to get into the craft a couple years back, before the BBC and Discovery stuff, because I really I loved movies and I loved performances and telling stories. And so I dedicated, I said to myself, right, I'm going to concentrate on the craft. And I put myself into an acting school in Singapore. And then literally 4 months in, after I had finished this course, I get an email from a BBC producer. It's like, oh, we're revamping this global travel show. We've seen your stuff. Would you like to be a part of the team? I was like, well, if this isn't a sign of getting me back on track, I don't know what is. So I went on back into broadcast, and then following that, I worked with Discovery, and so when the emails came for auditioning, they were general emails to my management team in Singapore. And I was like, well, I'm not an actor. Why, it's a waste of everybody's time. I'll pass. So I passed on it 2 or 3 times. And then it wasn't until John getting hold of me directly through a friend was like, why has it been so hard to get hold of you? This is such a crazy, this is an amazing opportunity. I beg you, just put yourself on tape. And I kind of shook myself out of my preconception of who I was. Again, it goes back to identity.
Yeah.
I identified with myself as being a travel host and a television guy. I had closed off those doors of being somebody else. But finding your identity doesn't mean you can't change it. A lot of people think you're stuck in this concrete vision of who you are, but we develop as humans, and we change and we evolve. And so that was a point in my life where I had to sort of open myself to it, and it changed my life.
Are you now living in Los Angeles? Is that...
Yes, we moved over last year. Perfect timing.
Yeah.
For
staying at home for you.
Perfect timing for that. The shit show that is COVID in America.
Yeah. Not that it's not a shit show in England either.
in Asia, it seems. I mean, they've my wife's from Taiwan, and there's been, it looks like it's back to normal. Hong Kong, a lot of these Asian cities, they've been America's been struggling with it a little bit, and it's so sad to sort of see. But time and vaccines and sensibility hopefully will prevail.
Yeah. Have you did you when they were casting Lewis's role, did you have to rehearse together? Did they want to see what the chemistry was like, or was it a separate project?
No, it was kind of a separate. I think Hong already had Parker in mind, and Parker did Southside with you. Is that the correct one? That's right. Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And yeah, and that's a huge sort of responsibility for an actor, and he killed it. And I think that's where Hong was sort of this is the guy. And I'm sure they had meetings and things, and after a meeting with me, he was like, right, you guys are going to get on like a house on fire. We never had what they call a chemistry test, and we were kind of thrown into it. And we had a day, the first day that we met, we had a little wander around Saigon, and sort of got to know each other and embarked on this little journey.
It's interesting just visually how he finds images. So often you're filmed through glass, through windows, in mirrors, increasing that sense of the character's isolation. was this something that the director, that you were aware he was doing, that you talked about before you did it, or?
Yeah, that was again definitely by design. We had phenomenal DP by the name of Ben Krakauer, who's extremely talented and made the film just look beautiful. But he wanted that sense of kind of isolation, seeing from afar, always sort of looking through a filter as such. You know, a cloudedness in reality, and I think that was kind of Kit's experience. Was like he felt like he wasn't there, he wasn't present, but just because of what was happening around him, and getting to know and understanding the reasons why his parents left, and who they left in turn, and what happened to them, and so yeah, the cinematography really helped kind of building that presence.
Yeah. Just curious if do you have any thoughts about where the story goes from the end? Does Kit stay in Vietnam?
I think, you know, I would love to say that he, I would love to say that he stays. I would love to say that he finds peace. You know, I don't want to give away the ending too much, but
Right.
you see him kind of come to an understanding. And one of my favorite scenes is the very end, where they have that long take, and just like it shows him at peace with himself. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And that there is a sense of hope, you know, be it hope in Vietnam or within himself.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's such a lovely ending.
It is. It is. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really
I appreciate it, David. Thank you.
appreciate it. And let's hope that we get out of our houses before in
For sure.
2021 and resume
Absolutely.
our lives.
Best of luck. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so
All
much.
right. Bye.